Hey guys, this video is part 2 of 4 of my in-ear monitor series. In this video, I'm going to go over how you can run and mix your own in-ears for your band using a digital mixer, an app, and a splitter. So with this video, you're going to learn how to be in charge of what you hear in your monitor mix, and you'll never have to ask a monitor guy for more vocals in your monitor ever again. Instead, you'll have an app on your phone or tablet, and you can turn up your vocals in your ears instead of having to ask someone else. Before we continue, I'm assuming that you have a general understanding of how in-ear monitors work and how they are set up. If not, I would watch video 1 in this series, which you can find by clicking the link up above or a link in the description down below. This does take a little while to set up initially, and this video is somewhat long, but I wanted to give you all the details you needed. But once you have it set up, it's pretty straightforward after that. If you have no idea how to do this, I'd recommend watching the whole video. But if you're interested in certain parts, like you tried figuring this out on your own, but you have questions, I'll post the time codes on the screen right now so you can skip around and find what you need. But if you have no idea how to do this, I would watch the whole video because you might miss something. Okay, so first of all, why would you do this? So this is beneficial for multiple reasons. And when my band started doing this, it was a huge change and it made everything so much easier to hear, and it was just beneficial for multiple reasons. So first of all, running your own in-ears means you don't have to use floor wedges, and you don't have to ask a monitor guy or a sound guy to adjust your mix. If something isn't sounding right in your mix, say you need less guitar in your in-ears, you use an app on your phone and you turn down the guitar. It's up to you to control your mix. Second, the mix is always going to be the same from venue to venue. Again, you're in charge of setting your own mix, and then you save those settings in your digital mixer. So the mix you had at your last rehearsal or your last show is the same mix that you're going to have today, so you don't have to worry about the mix changing from venue to venue. Third, this is extremely helpful if you use backing tracks. I can't tell you the number of shows I've seen where a band uses backing tracks without in-ears and they can't hear the mellow piano part in the bridge of their song because it's not loud enough in their floor monitors, and they lose where they are and they turn around and look at their drummer to find their way back into the rhythm of the song. I've seen that happen so many times. This way you can hear the backing tracks and an optional click track if you want directly in your ears as loud as you want them. Fourth, if your band has to provide sound or PA for shows, this is almost a complete no-brainer because it saves so much space on floor wedges. It's just far more efficient. You need less equipment. It's just, in-ears are definitely a lot less time consuming than having to set up floor wedges and mix those. And fifth, as long as you tell them ahead of time, many sound guys actually prefer this because they can plug directly into their system and they don't have to run cables anywhere. This isn't always the case. Some sound guys, get grumpy. Many of them get grumpy if they've already ran the cables and then you show up and say you want to use your own system. So just be sure to tell them ahead of time. But most people, in my experience, most sound guys actually prefer this. Okay, so what gear do you need in order to make this work? You need 3 things: a digital mixer, a splitter, and then an app on your phone or tablet to control your mix. So first, the digital mixer. Most digital mixers are in a rack space, and those are the ones that I usually recommend. Most common ones are the Behringer X32, the Behringer X series, the 1816 or 12. SOUNDCRAFT and PreSonus also have models as well. I personally have used the Behringer ones almost exclusively, so those are the ones that I personally like and I recommend, but I've seen other people use the other ones. As of right now, it seems like the X32 seems to be the most common one that I've seen people use in my experience, and for good reason. It's a great system. Which one you need really depends on how many inputs you need and how many in-ear mixes you're going to be sending to musicians. So for example, the XR18 has 18 inputs, and then it also has 6 aux outputs. The inputs are pretty self-explanatory. The aux outputs will be what you use to send the in-ear monitor mix to each musician. So again, if you need to send 6 different mixes to 6 different musicians, you're going to need at least 6 aux outputs. The second thing you're going to need is a splitter. There's 2 types of splitters, a floor splitter and a rack splitter. The splitter is used to split the signal. So everybody plugs all of your instruments into the splitter. One side of the splitter goes to front of house for your sound guy to mix, and one side goes to your in-ear monitor system for your band to mix your in-ears, and you guys mix those separately. And the last thing you're going to need is an app. Every company has its own mixing app to control their digital mixer, and each musician will use their phone or their tablet to control their in-ear mix. It just connects over Wi-Fi, and I'm going to go over that once we go over the how to set up. All right, so the setup. So again, this is going to take a little while to get it initially set up, but after you do some of these steps, you won't have to do them again. So the first step is the digital setup, labeling everything in your mixer with a tablet. So first, download the app you need to control your digital mixer. Every system is different, but every system is going to have an app that you control a mixer with. Most of the time, you'll need an iPad or a tablet instead of a phone to do this, but some are able to do this on the phone. For the X32 rack, which I'm using to demo this video, I'm using X32 Mix. If you cannot find the app for your mixer, or they don't have it for like the phone, but they do have it for an iPad, but you don't own an iPad, look into the app Mixing Station. This is one that you can get on your phone, and it controls multiple different mixers. Okay, so you'll need to connect a Wi-Fi router to the digital mixers. Many digital mixers have a built-in router, and you can use that, especially for this initial setup, but I found that most of them are really weak, and if you look online, a lot of people complain about that as well. The built-in routers to these mixers are usually suck. So I would definitely recommend getting an external router that's going to be a lot better and more reliable. This isn't really a video on how to set up wireless routers. Every wireless router is a little different, so you'll have to look into your specific router that you get on how to set them up, but it's not usually difficult. Once it's set up, plug your router into your mixer with an Ethernet cable. So once your router is connected to your mixer, connect your tablet to the Wi-Fi network that's connected to your mixer. Now open the app that controls your mixer. For the X32, again, this is the app that I'm using. Sometimes I do use an XAir 18 and I use this app. So again, every app is a little different. At this point, some apps require that you know the IP address as well as the Wi-Fi network. But most of them, once they're connected to the Wi-Fi router, that's all you need. Just keep in mind, you might have to manually input the IP address here. So once I'm connected to the IP address and the Wi-Fi network, you should be able to control your mixer now. So for this tutorial, I'm going to have the smallest band in the world. They only need 4 inputs: 1 vocal, 1 electric guitar, which is controlled with an HX Stomp amp modeler, backing tracks, and a click track. So in your mixer app, label everything. On the X32 app, you tap here, and you select the naming tab, and then you give it a name. So input 1 is going to be vocals. I'm going to go back to home. I'm going to do the same thing for input 2. I'm going to label that electric guitar or HX Stomp or whatever you want. Input 3, I'm going to label as backing tracks. And input 4 will be click. Now to label the individual mixes to send to different musicians, you do that in the bus setting up here. So it's usually labeled bus, not aux. On mine, it said bus. This might get a little bit confusing because my X32 has aux listed as something else, but those are the 1/4-inch inputs in the mixer. So a little bit confusing because on the Behringer X Air ones, like the Air 18, they label the auxes as the output. So just keep that in mind, but it's usually under bus. So now you want to label each of these buses and give them a name as well, just in the same way. You click it, hit naming, and give it a name. So musician A, who is going to get mix bus 1, you're going to put their name followed by ears or monitor or MON or something like that. So bus 1 is going to be labeled Steve Ears. Steve is musician A in this imaginary band. Going to do the same thing for bus 2. Bus 2 is going to go to musician B. This is Bob Ears. Bob is the imaginary guitarist, and so on and so forth. So you keep doing this for every musician in your band. So now everything should be labeled. All your inputs are labeled with the instruments you're plugging into your in-ear system, and all of your bus sends are labeled as the different mixes for the different musicians who are going to have an in-ear mix. Okay, now that everything's labeled in the digital world, let's make some connections. So first we're going to go over plugging in your in-ears. If you have a rack system and your digital mixer lives inside of a rack, you only need to do this once. If not, you'll have to do this at every show, and every musician will bring their own in-ear monitor system and plug in when they get to the show. That works as well. I've done this both ways. This is pretty simple. You plug each in-ear monitor system to a different aux out or out of your mixer. So my X32 actually has it labeled out 1 through 8 and labels out 7 and 8 as the main left and right. So remember, musician A, Steve in this case, is getting his mix from bus 1. So you need to plug his in-ear monitor system into aux 1, or in my case, out 1. And therefore, mix bus 1 is going to go to his ears. Make sense? So musician B, Bob in our example, is going to plug into output 2 because Bob mix is coming out of mix bus 2. Make sense? So plug musician C into output or aux 3, so on and so forth. So keep in mind this can be done by plugging in a wireless in-ear system, or you could run a long cable to a wired headphone amp to someone like the drummer, for example, because the drummer doesn't need to be wireless necessarily. So at this point, everything is labeled in your digital mixer, and all of your in-ear monitor systems, wired or wireless, are plugged into the proper out or aux ports of your digital mixer. All right, so plugging your instruments into the split snake. For this example of how to set up, I'm using my X32 mixer, and this is the floor split snake that I'm using. If you do end up getting an X32, I'd recommend getting a rack splitter because they can both live in the rack and just makes your life a lot easier. But for just doing this tutorial, it's just easier for you to see and me to explain it using a floor splitter. For this video, this is my setup. This is my Art Audio patch bay. All it does is just a clean patch bay that allows me to plug in here. Then I have the cables already connected to my X32. So input 1 here goes directly into input 1 on my mixer. Input 2 goes into input 2 on my mixer. Again, your system might vary up how you're connected. This is just mine set up for this tutorial. So on the split snake, input 1 is vocals, 2 is guitar, 3 is backing tracks, and 4 is click. Just in the exact same way that we labeled everything in the digital mixer. So I'm going to plug in vocals into input 1 of the splitter. Next, I'm going to take the output from my HX stomp and plug it into input 2. You might have an amp and you'll mic your guitar amp and plug the guitar mic amp into input 2 of the split snake, and it all just depends on your setup. I'm just using an HX stomp for this one. So for the backing tracks, it's coming from an iPad. This is my splitter cable. It takes a stereo signal coming out of the iPad and splits it so that the right side is coming out of the red cable and the left side is coming out of the white cable. So the backing tracks are panned all the way to the right and the click track is panned all the way to the left. If you don't know how to do this, I do have an entire backing track tutorial series. You can find links for those above or down in the description down below. So I'm plugging these into a direct box. Red is the right side, which contains the backing tracks. I'm plugging that into the direct box. Click is on the left, which is the white cable, so I'm plugging that into a direct box. And then for both direct boxes, you take the XLR out and plug those into the splitter. However, at this point, if you want, you can just plug the left side, the white cable, directly into your in-ear monitor mixers without it going to the split snake. Because remember, the splitter sends your instruments to both the sound guy and your in-ear monitor system. You don't have to send the click track to your sound guy. I mean, he just won't plug it in, but you have that option. You can just plug your click directly into your mixer because you don't need to send that to front of house. So all my inputs are connected for this imaginary band. You're going to keep doing the same thing for all the instruments in your band. Okay, from the split snake, you will take your side of the split snake and plug that into your mixer accordingly. So your cables should be labeled. So plug in input 1, the one that says cable 1, into your side of the split snake into input 1 of your mixer. Cable 2 goes into input 2, 3 into 3, 4 into 4, so on and so forth. So you plugged your vocals into input 1 of the splitter. You then take your side of the splitter, plug cable 1 into channel 1 of your mixer. Your sound guy will then take the other side and plug those into his sound system and mix front of house. So now that everything is connected to your mixer, you also want to properly set your gain here. And again, this is something you're only going to have to do once, and then the mixer will remember these settings. So you shouldn't have to do this once all this is set up. So you want to set your gain for your vocals, your EQ, and all your compression and stuff like that. Remember, this is just for your in-ears. This does not change the EQ for the front of house system at all. You split the signal. All the instruments run to the split snake. You take one side, front of house takes the other side, and you both mix differently. So the EQ you set on your vocals will not be the same as the EQ they set at front of house. So now, sing into your mic, get the right level set, and then add EQ and compression and stuff like that to taste. Do this for all your instruments. Again, once this is done, you won't have to do it again, unless, of course, your guitarist changes his setting or turns his guitar up or turns up louder than last time, which, as a guitar player, I admit that's a very likely scenario. Okay, so to review, now everything is connected. Your instruments are all plugged into the split snake. Your side of the split snake is plugged into your mixer. The sound guy has taken the other part of the split snake and plugged it into their system. Your in-ear monitor systems are all plugged into the correct outputs of the mixer, and everything is labeled properly in your mixer with all the gain, EQ, compression, stuff like that set up how you want it. All right, now how musicians control their own in-ears. Every digital mixer will have some sort of app that you can download to mix just the aux channels. So when you get these smaller apps and you can't change things like EQ, compression, and gain, you can only control the overall volume of what instruments you want in your mix, which is actually a great thing because there's less room to get confused on for all your musicians to find the right menu. It's really self-explanatory. So when your router is plugged into the mixer, have all the musicians connect to that Wi-Fi network. Now have all the musicians load the app. I'm using MXQ to control my X32. Again, most of these apps will automatically find the IP address once you're connected to Wi-Fi, but if not, you can enter it manually. Here, the first step is have them select their specific bus channel. In mine, you do that by clicking up here, and then you click the mix that you want to hear. Make sure that all your musicians in your band understand this is the first step to do. I guarantee within the first 3 shows, one of your bandmates will go, "How come I can't hear my bass in my ears?" Is because they're trying to adjust the bass on their guitarist mixing. Guarantee it's going to happen. Make sure they all know this is the first step. So make sure you're on your mix, and now you just control your own mix. So, for example, I've selected Steve Ears. In Steve's ears, he wants a lot of vocals, a little guitar, a lot of tracks, and very little click. I'm going to switch over to musician B, Bob. In his mix, he wants no vocals, a ton of guitar, a little bit of backing tracks, and a lot of click track. Make sense? Once the musicians are connected to the digital mixer and the Wi-Fi network, they are in charge of mixing their own ears. This is super helpful and makes everyone happy with what they hear in their in-ear mix, and they're in control of it. No one else has to change it. It's up to them. Also, again, it should save automatically when you're done, so what you have set at your rehearsal or your setup for this will be the exact same that you use the next time. And that's it. You're finally set up. It's a lot of steps, but again, once it's set up, next time you should just be able to turn on, connect to the network, and you're able to control your mix. All right, that's about how you set it up. So my personal recommendations for gear. For in-ear monitor systems, I went over that in my first video, so you can go watch my recommendations in that video. But I'll post links down below to my recommendations for in-ear monitor systems and earbuds. For mixers, I personally love the X32 rack, but it really depends on how many inputs and in-ear mixes you're going to need. Again, if you need 16 inputs, don't get a mixer that has 12 inputs. It's pretty basic. The X32, pretty much the most common ones used now, and for a good reason. It's a great system. It's about $1,000 to $1,200 for the rack. For what it does, that's a killer deal. It's such a good system. The XR18 works really well too. It's about half that price at about $500, $600. You get 18 inputs and 6 aux sends. The XR 16 and 12 are also good options, depending on how many inputs and aux sends you need. The thing that's weird about those is that the 16 has 8 combo inputs that accept either XLR or quarter inch, and then 8 of those inputs are only quarter inch. And then the 12 has 4 of those combos of XLR's quarter inch, and 8 of them are only quarter inch inputs, which is kind of annoying. So just keep that in mind. I've survived on them, but it's kind of just obnoxious. Also keep in mind, you can use the headphone out as another monitor send with those, which I did once when I used the 12 with my trio. We needed 3 different mixes, and mix 3 ended up coming out the headphone amp. And there's a way to do that in the mixer. So I personally recommend the BEHRINGER ones just because those are the ones that I've used. A lot of people do like the SOUNDCRAFT ones, which I've seen them use. I've just never used them personally with my setups, but I know a lot of my friends do enjoy those. All right, for splitters, the cheapest one, the most common one I've seen are the SEISMIC audio ones, either the rack or the floor ones. I've used both of them. I've never really had any issues with them. Again, you'll just need the one with the right amount of inputs for your band. I do plan to switch over to the BTPA stuff. I follow them on Instagram. They make some really cool stuff, and they do for all sorts of touring acts. I would check them out for sure, and I do plan to switch over to their setup. Links for all of those are in the description down below. Okay, just a couple of tips. First, get an external router. Almost all the onboard ones suck. I did a gig once where I was using the internal router at a wedding, and I swear to God, it lost its connection, and then it sounded like a stormtrooper exploding. That's the only way I could describe it. It was horrible. Luckily, it was during the setup of the wedding, so we just got glares from the catering people and stuff like that. But it didn't happen during the ceremony, thank God. But just get an external router. So even if you don't hear stormtroopers exploding, the internal ones are just really weak, and you almost always lose signals. So you're trying to adjust your in-ears, and it can't connect over the Wi-Fi. So I would definitely recommend getting a good one. Another piece of advice, let the venue know ahead of time that you have an in-ear monitor system, and send a stage plot and an input list. Send it with email, and also have it printed out with all of your stuff labeled accordingly on your gear. I guarantee you will piss off your sound guy if you show up and you don't tell them about this ahead of time. You'll piss them off even more if you don't have everything labeled properly. Third, have each musician know exactly where to plug in their instruments and their in-ear monitors. The absolute hardest part about this is if you're the only one who knows how to set up your in-ear monitor system, and everyone is asking you while you're trying to set up, hey, where do I plug in again? Where's my belt pack? What channel am I on? And so on and so forth. So tell your bassist, when you get set up, plug into channel 3 of the splitter. Your in-ear belt pack says bass on it. The password is 12345 on the router. If you remember those, you're good to go. It makes your life a lot easier. Trust me, have everyone know exactly where they plug in and exactly how to set up. Another tip, get a rack to help minimize setup and have as much pre-connected as possible. The more pre-connected you can have ahead of time, the better. Another tip, are you low on money? In-ear monitor systems do get expensive. Everyone can get, for example, a single mix with just a click and vocals, for example. So if as a band, you decide on one mix, all you guys are going to get is just click and vocals, and then you'll hear the rest of the instruments on stage or in the wedges. So you would just need one in-ear monitor transmitter and then multiple receivers. So you would plug from your mixer into one transmitter, and then everyone would have an in-ear monitor receiver on their belt set to the same channel as the transmitter. So you're all getting the same mix. So again, that only works if you all agree on sharing a mix. So if you all can agree on sharing the same mix, you don't have to have your own mix. Although I will say, usually what happens is you guys start to argue, your guitar was too loud at the last show, I couldn't hear my vocals. That's going to happen. So if you can get your own mixes, it is helpful, but I realize budget is a part of it. Another tip, get a talkback mic. Set up a mic to the side of the stage or behind the singer so the singer or whoever can turn around, play their back to the crowd, and talk into the talkback mic. This will only go to your in-ears and not front of house. This way the singer or whoever can say, hey, skip the next song, or pause for a minute, I need a tune before we start the next song, or whatever inside jokes your band says is usually what you end up using it for. But it's a great way to communicate with everyone who has in-ears and then the audience doesn't hear it. Another tip, drums are the hardest to set up, especially if you're doing a show where you're like second out of 3 bands and you have to do that 15-minute changeover. Drums are the hardest thing to set up with this. Some bands just do a kick and a snare in the ears. Others just do like a kick and overhead. Others do like a trash can mic, so that kind of gets a general mix. It really depends on you. If you have a good, 60 to 90 minutes for a sound check, you should be good with miking everything. But with that 15-minute changeover, it always takes a while. It always takes a while for the band before you to get all their crap off stage, and then you have to run every single drum mic cable to the splitter. It just takes a while. If you do decide to do this, you could get a stage box, which is really nice because you plug into that, and then it has a loom of cables that you go to plug in to the split snake. So that really does help. I like the Elite Core ones. I'll post a link down below if you are interested in that. But just realize that this does take a little while longer to set up. But if everyone plans ahead of time and everyone knows exactly where to plug in, it shouldn't take that long. My last tip, honestly, plan that something is going to go wrong the first few times you do this. This is a new piece of gear. Get used to just setting it up and how it works. It might sound silly, but practice setting it up at rehearsal. But seriously, it's a new member of the band. Give the in-ear monitor system a name, call it Karen or something, and treat it as such. Get used to how to set it up. With any sort of new piece of technology, plan for something to go wrong. That's just the way it's going to be. But the more knowledge you have on it, the less likely it's going to be a showstopper, and it's just going to be a minor inconvenience instead. So just plan for it. And it gets better once you get comfortable using it. It's a new piece of technology. It just takes some learning. But I'd rather be honest with you and let you know something is going to go wrong. It's just going to happen just with any new piece of gear. So plan ahead and just be as knowledgeable as you can. All right, that's about it. So thank you guys for watching. The next 2 videos are going to be kind of unconventional, unique ways to set up in-ear monitor systems, including a DIY way to do wireless in-ear monitors for only $100, and then some other cool little tips. So links will be down in the description down below once that video is available. If you guys found this helpful, please like and subscribe. It definitely helps out my channel when you do that. Links for everything are down in the description down below, including my recommendations for gear. I'll post some of my band links down below so you can see some of the bands that I use this setup with, in case you're curious on that. Shameless promotion. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.